All right, it's been a while since I said it. You already know it though. God is great. Amazing even. Why did I just say great? Well, you know. Anyway, let's call Isaiah 57 devout men, a phrase that is literally going to come up within the first couple of verses. As this passage is going to start out in verse 1, talking about the way in which the righteous man perishes and no one lays it to heart. Devout men are taken away while no one understands. For the righteous man is taken away from calamity. He enters into peace. Understanding that what is happening to the righteous and devout men is actually delivering them from what's ahead. Understanding that much of the book of Isaiah is devoted to prophesying the coming judgment on the lower two tribes, the kingdom of Judah. He is then going to go on in verses 3 roughly through 13 to talk about the way in which those who are left are actually mocking, seemingly, quite possibly mocking the righteous who seem to have fallen into misfortune. But in questioning them, God is going to talk about the way in which their idolatry is actually attracting for them worse days ahead, understanding that even if he gives them credit for their righteousness, it is not going to balance out the way in which he is going to hold them accountable for all the things that they have been doing in Judah. Understanding all of that, though, verses 14 through the end of the chapter, verse 21, are still going to talk about what seems to be a day of redemption, what most of the end of the book of Isaiah seems to be devoted to. However, it is not all roses. Understanding that he is going to say in verse 14, build up, prepare the way, remove every obstruction from my people's way. For, verse 15, he dwells in a high and holy place with him who is of a contrite and lowly spirit, to revive the spirit of the lowly and to revive the heart of the contrite. Verse 16, for he will not contend forever, and because of the iniquity of his unjust gain, he was angry with him, having seen his ways. In verse 18, he is going to say, but he will still heal him. Verse 19, saying, peace, peace to the far and to the near, says the Lord, and I will heal him. However, verse 20 is going to conclude, much like we saw in chapter 48, verse 22, but the wicked are like the tossing sea, for it cannot be quiet, and its waters toss up mire and dirt. There is no peace, says my God, for the wicked. This chapter reminding me why the word used to be commonly known as good news. Understanding that most of the chapter is devoted to talking about those who were flat out doing dirt or doing wrong. But he's saying for those even committed to doing wrong, who are willing to be contrite, he is willing to heal. Understanding that only the first couple of verses are devoted to those who were generally recognized by God, at least, as being righteous and devout men, with the next 11 verses or so talking about those who weren't all that righteous, and as we mentioned, the last 8 verses or so talking about the way in which there was still a decent future ahead for those who were willing to stop doing dirt, as long as they were willing to be contrite, and as the word describes it, lowly. Reminding me of the way in which one of the greatest barriers to our success can be our pride, not wanting to look weak in a season where God has called for our humility. Reminding me the way we started off our study of the book of Isaiah, noticing that we will not be saved on our own terms. And much like the unrighteous seem to have mocked the devout and righteous who seemed to fall into misfortune, but were actually being spared the difficult days ahead, there are people in your life who can control the narrative about you, but cannot control God's standards. And so whether we seem to have fallen into misfortune for righteous or even unrighteous reasons, the standard remains the same. Are we willing to make every change that he's counseling us to make? And even though I almost forgot the original ending, as an added word of encouragement for those going through it, trying to maintain their integrity, this chapter reminds us that not every apparent misfortune is an actual misfortune, as much as it might be. God trying to spare us from much more difficult days ahead.